Hey, this is Bad Movie Mark of the Mad Movie Mark Movie Review. Thank you for joining me as I review the 1921 Swedish silent film, The Phantom Carriage. Hey, well, I'm sorry to wake you up, but I think it's going to be worth it. I think this is going to be a pretty good review. The Phantom Carriage is considered by many to be the greatest Swedish film of all time. I would have to disagree. I think that Through a Glass Darkly is a better film. It is also considered to be one of the first horror films ever made. Now, this movie is based off a novel called Thy Soul Shall Bear Witness, but this movie to me is a lot like the story of A Christmas Carol. Now, David Holm is the main character, and on New Year's Eve he is compelled by a ghostly driver of death to reflect on his life and his past mistakes. When this movie opens up, we are introduced to a female character who is very young. She's probably in her late teens, early 20s. Her name is Edith, and she works at the Salvation Army, and she is on her deathbed. While on her deathbed, she requests to see David Holm. We are then shown David Holm. It is New Year's Eve. He is in a graveyard with two of his friends, and he is telling the story about someone he used to work with named Georges. Now, Georges is someone who was a terrible influence on David Holm's life. David Holm was a family man. He was very loving to his family, to his children. He had a really good life. And then Georges came in and basically made him a drunkard and an alcoholic and a terrible person. And Georges was someone who died on New Year's Eve the year before, and if you die on New Year's Eve, you basically have to become the Grim Reaper, where you drive Death's carriage, meaning that for an entire year you are in charge of going around and collecting souls who have just passed away. It's a job that really no one wants, because you run into people who are very emotional, very sad. They have reasons why they don't want to die. Maybe they have like a young children or a family that they're leaving, and they can't cope with the fact that they have passed away. And it's just a very difficult job to do, and basically no one wants to do it. And Georges is someone who has been doing it for the last year. Now, these three men, including David Holm and his two friends, end up getting in a fight in the cemetery, and David Holmes is hit upside the head with a bottle, and his soul leaves his body, and he basically passes away. After he passes away, Georges comes in and says, you are going to be the new carriage driver of death, because he died basically at midnight. He was the first soul to die on New Year's Eve, or New Year's Day / New Year's Eve. So you are going to be the new driver of death. And then he basically goes and shows him what his life was like before this event happened, the mistakes that he made in his life. There was a situation where he had an argument with his wife, and he decided that he was going to get revenge on her. So he goes to like this Salvation Army. While trying to find her, he finds the Salvation Army. He goes inside. He meets Edith, and Edith basically tries to get him and his wife back together. She ends up reconciling them together. They get back together, and then he ends up being a terrible person to his wife. He has tuberculosis. He ends up like coughing on her and coughing on the children, and it just becomes this really bad situation. So at the end of the movie, where Edith, or the beginning of the movie, which is now the end of the movie, where Edith is asking to talk to David Holm, it's because she believes that she caused him a lot of pain and anguish in his life, because she got him back with his wife. She reconciled them together, and then now like their whole family has tuberculosis because he had it, and he was just coughing on people and not caring about what he did, not caring about who he was hurt. Now, the ghost of Georges like takes him to Edith, and he ends up hearing all this stuff that Edith's saying about how it was her fault, and he grabs her hand, and he is very touched by this, and he decides that he's going to go home and like try to see his wife and see how things are going. So when he gets home, he sees his wife. His wife, who is stricken by tuberculosis, has decided that she is going to commit suicide and kill the kids as well, so that they don't have to live without a mother and father. And he is able to, he says that he's very sad by this. He just wants some way to stop it. Like, take my soul, take my spirit, take my life, whatever you want to do. I just don't want my kids and my wife to suffer. I don't want them to die. Do whatever you have to do to me. Just save them. And then he ends up getting his soul back into his body, he is able to go and save his wife and his children. I was a bit confused by this, to be honest, because I really thought he was going to be the driver of death. Like, I thought he was going to be there was nothing in this movie that led me to believe that this was just like a Christmas Carol thing where he's reflecting on his life, and at the end he says, oh, please, like, just let me live again, like, It's a Wonderful Life type of thing. Like, let me just live again so I can help my wife and my children, and then it actually happens. That was a huge shock for me, and actually it was kind of a letdown, to be honest. I really want this movie to be about him being the driver of death, and not about him reflecting on his life, and not like, but I mean, it's a great story. They do a great job with it. I watched this in 4K, like a remastered version, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. One of the most gorgeous silent films I've ever seen. I need to watch all of them in 4K, apparently, because the way it's remastered is just absolutely beautiful. It's got like the colored lenses, like I always refer to, with Nosferatu, because Nosferatu is like one of the first silent films I ever saw, and it has like the yellows and the blues and like the oranges and the different lenses, which looks absolutely amazing. But yeah, I was a little disappointed that this wasn't more about him going and collecting souls and like having to live this terrible existence where he has to hear all these really sad stories of people. I really thought that's what this movie was going to be when I read the description about him having to be like the driver of death, basically the Grim Reaper. I was a little taken aback by that, but it's still a great movie. It has tremendous acting. The cinematography is still fantastic. Like I said, it's still a great story. I love what they did with it. Kind of I believe it's a take on the Christmas Carol. The Christmas Carol was only written like 60 years before this movie came out, which is absolutely nuts to think that a movie would come out like 60 years after A Christmas Carol was written. It's just the timeline for things. It's just crazy to me trying to think about it and look back on it. But it's still a fantastic movie. The music is also really good. For a lot of these silent films, I've noticed a lot of them don't have actual soundtracks, and the soundtracks have been like regular people just putting their own music into these movies. There's gonna be one later that I'm gonna watch that's like 5 hours long that has no original score. But this movie has an original score, and it's absolutely phenomenal. It really paints the scenes well. It really adds to the tension. It really adds to the horror aspect of the movie. It's a great film. It's not the best, like I said, not the best Swedish film I've ever seen, not the best silent film I've ever seen, but it's still really solid. I think that I gave it a 9 out of 10. I hope you join me next time when I review a movie that's a silent film, but I don't remember what it's called right now. But it's going to be a short film, I believe. Now, I didn't want to do short films for this list, but there's just so many of them that I'm going to have to. And I'm going to have to go back and do the short films I skipped from the 1910s through 1919, because I did skip a few of those. But yeah, I hope you join me for my next review, which is going to be of a short film. I will have the title for you later. Thank you. Have a great day.